What's going on there, internets? Doing the first book review here on Generally Nerdy. I interviewed this author at Denver Comic-Con, so I figured it only fitting that this be the first book review. Ideally, I will do more of these in the future, but my day job just started picking up. I got a promotion, so I have a little bit less time to do YouTube videos, but I should be able to get some of these done. So the book, #Static by Eric Laster, is young adult fiction. Runs about 331 pages, and it was pretty good. I really enjoyed reading it. Any critical things that I might have to say about it are only critical because, I obviously talked to Eric at Comic-Con. I want to see him do well, and I read a lot, so I feel like I have a fairly critical eye when it comes to fiction. So with that said, let's get into the review. Again, a really good book. The one thing that I was a little thrown off by was when you think young adult fiction, you think like 13, 14-year-olds. And for me, that has one set of language associated with it. This language was a little bit more mature than that. The language that he used in this book was a little more along the lines of like 16, 17, kind of a PG-13 plus, if you will. There is one fairly, again, through the scope of young adult fiction, it is a fairly explicit sex scene depicted between two, high school seniors, so it's not anything that's like questionable there, but questionable in again, you have an expectation when you're reading young adult fiction. It's, Ender's Game, Hunger Games, things of that nature. It's not what you get in this sex scene. Again, a little off-putting, but I did like the main character is a kid named Curtis Brooks. His brother recently died in a strange car accident, and he doesn't feel like the police are doing enough to investigate, so he starts investigating himself. It's a mystery because you don't know who killed his brother. And then you throw in the added element of he's getting phone calls from his dead brother. It's very interesting. The afterlife is a giant Walmart, effectively, which is a really cool take on death. It's basically everything that's died. Everything that's died. So, like products at the grocery store that are no longer there, things that are no longer for sale are for sale in the aftermarket, and the dead get credits to purchase these things that nobody wanted to begin with, and they get stuck in an area of the aftermarket, which it's called, that is associated with the time in which they died. So there are people way in the back of this store that were like, and Wilt, the older brother, meets some of these people throughout the story that are from like the Roman times, and that part of the plot is really interesting. I think that's one of the reasons why I liked this book so much, is because of the very unique take on death. And it's just incredibly entertaining. Laster definitely knows how to write a mystery. There are enough red herrings in there to keep you guessing pretty much all the way through. There's a definite point where he's kind of spoon-feeding you, this is who it's gonna be, but that's not as early as it is in some books. Like if you read the Sookie Stackhouse novels from Charlene Harris, she definitely gives it away a lot sooner than Laster does in this book. This was probably the best piece of young adult fiction I've read in the past 5 years or so. Have not read Hunger Games, but I'm not huge on young adult fiction because oftentimes it seems a little too geared. It seems a little geared too young for me. But this one, like I said, is geared a little older, so it's a little bit more, you can associate yourself a little bit better with it being not a young adult. Okay, so back to the story, because get sidetracked with the take on death. Wilt is the big brother who died, who's giving the phone calls. He's going through therapy, and part of his therapy is to make these phone calls, and there's a lot of stuff associated with the phone calls, how frequently they happen, that starts to clue in Curtis with what might have happened to his brother that got him killed, and that leads him to Yang and Nunez. He actually meets Nunez first, who has him start taking care of these crazy dogs, and then later we meet Yang, who is Nunez's boss, and we find out they're running a dog fighting ring, and that somehow Wilt was caught up in this dog fighting ring, and so there's a lot of stuff dealing with this dog fighting ring, and that's not even dealing with the side story of Curtis's romance with his dead brother's girlfriend, a girl named Susie Painter, and that is, again, thematically, we get a lot more sex with Susie. It's not as explicit as the other sex scene. It was a girl that Curtis met and just randomly had sex, which is kind of the thing that threw me a little bit. But there's still a couple of scenes where Curtis and Susie are intimate. Seems a little bit more appropriate, again, for somebody who's probably about 16, 17 years old, not a 13-year-old or younger by any means. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. There is a little bit of an element there, and I feel like the one critical thing I would have to say about Curtis's relationship with Susie is it's written by a guy who hasn't been a teenager for a while. No offense, Eric. It's just kind of obvious the way. But again, I haven't been a teenager for a while either, so maybe he has a nephew or something who he was riffing this off of, or a family friend who has a kid or something. Maybe he's a little more in tune with the way kids speak today, or the way kids conduct themselves in a romantic fashion. But from what I was reading, it felt a little disjointed as far as the relationship between Curtis and Susie. Though, speaking of language, and speaking of the vocabulary used in this book, again, not exactly what I would associate with youth, the way they speak, but very, very creative. I mean, there are some things in there that, yeah, I can see, like my little sister, who actually just turned 21, so she's not a young adult anymore necessarily either. But I can totally see some of this language being used by younger people. I feel so old saying that. I can see that being used by teenagers. It's very creative language. It is very descriptive language, and Laster definitely does a wonderful job of showing you everything that's going on. Even though it is, again, only 331 pages, you can visualize the entirety of the scene that he's describing to you. There's definitely there's definitely no loss there. You're not confused. There were no times that I can recall reading this book that I was like, all right, so what just happened? And sometimes in the adult novels, the adult mysteries, you get that a lot because they're trying to be vague and they're trying to make you guess. Laster keeps it vague, but also illustrates the scene very, very well. And the vocabulary, the dialogue between the characters is really cool. The main character, again, Curtis, has a very colorful vocabulary, and I would hope that kids or teenagers had such a colorful vocabulary and such a broad lexicon, but I don't think that that's necessarily the case. though I'm right there with you, Eric, I do, again, I feel like that kind of vocabulary would be fantastic if kids could associate with that. But that, I feel like, is another thing that kind of sets it towards an older age range. Overall, we get a really interesting mystery dealing with some older teenage kids, and it's a very fun read. So, recommendation, I would recommend it for anybody who is, again, late teens into their early 20s will really enjoy this book if you like mysteries. Even older, because obviously I'm not in my late teens or early 20s anymore, but I did thoroughly enjoy this book. So with that, I'm definitely going to sign off. Stay tuned. I'm going to be doing some videos for Salt Lake Comic Con. If you guys have any requests for things that I should cover at the con, definitely shoot me an email. You can hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, all generally nerdy. Instagram, on Instagram I'll be posting some pictures there from the con as well. And just keep posted. And remember, if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.
Hey guys, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to click subscribe, check out anything else I've posted, and remember, if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.